Okay, moving along to the Rig Veda. Rig Veda is a series of different hymns that are all compiled together into a single text, and they do this over centuries, a long period of time. So it's kind of like if you want to think about a text that is more familiar to you, the older the New Testament, right? Where all of these different texts are composed individually, and eventually somebody combines them, selects them, chooses what to include and what not to include. So you've got several in here that talk about the origin of some gods or the origin of the universe. But for the purpose of this tutorial, and to use just one example, let's look at the last one, the hymn to Parusa, or the cosmic person. So I know this sounds really weird, right? All of this is kind of sing-songy and chanty, which tells you that there's probably an oral tradition. It's a heck of a lot easier to remember songs. But the question here is kind of, hey, where does society come from? If we've already handled where do kings come from, why does society look the way it is? Why does the universe look the way it is? And this hymn gives the answer to it. So let's look at it real quick, and I'm going to read through it here a little bit. Thousand-headed is Parusa, thousand-eyed, thousand-footed. Having covered the earth on all sides, he stood above it the width of 10 fingers. Only Parusa is all this, that which there is, that which is to be. He's the Lord of the mortals, who grows by means of ritual food, sacrifice. Okay, so what is Parusa? Parusa is kind of everything. He is this cosmic being that encompasses all of creation. Such is his greatness, yet more than this is Parusa. 1/4 of him is all beings, so 1/4 of him is what lives on the earth. 3/4 of him is the immortal heaven. Okay, so from him the Shining One was born. The Shining One was born from Parusa, very much kind of like a chorus, something that would be repeated, indicative of a oral tradition. When he was born, he extended beyond the earth, behind as well as in front. When the gods had performed a sacrifice with the offering, Parusa, spring was its clarified butter. These are folks who are nomadic pastoralists. They milk animals. Butter is something that's particularly important to them and something they use as sacrifices. Within him, the gods sacrificed, the demigods the seers. From the sacrifices that were completely offered, the clotted butter was brought together. It made the beasts of the air, the forests and the villages. So unlike clay, which created Adam and Eve, here, this is kind of indicative of their herding and pastoralist background. Everything comes from animals and comes from butter, and butter makes animals as well, which is kind of cool. I'm going quickly here. I know it because I want to get to the important bit. From the sacrifices completely offered, the mantras, the Rig Veda, and the songs, the Samaveda, were born. So these hymns that are meant to instruct people come from sacrificing to gods, and gods tell people how to behave. So it's this kind of back and forth relationship. The meters, the songs, are born from it. How to sacrifice is born from it. The horses are born from it. Everything that has teeth in both jaws, cows are born from it. Goats, sheep, everything that's important to these folks who are nomadic pastoralists. This is the important part. When they divided Parusa, when the cosmic being was set up, how many ways did they apportion him? What was his mouth? What were his arms? What were his thighs and his feet declared to be? The question here is kind of, hey, we've got order in society, and you know this. There are 4 castes in Vedic society, and eventually even more. The response from the hymns that would have been given to people by priests is, okay, everybody is a component of this universe. Parusa's mouth are the priests, the Brahmin caste. They're the mouthpiece of God. They're the people who provide information from God to everyone else. They speak on his behalf. That makes sense. It's kind of what they do. The arms are the Kshatriya. They're the warriors. And it's not just 2 arms. If you look at the image, it's a variety of arms. They do all the work, the heavy lifting. The thighs are the Vaishya, the merchants, the traders. The feet are the Sudra, the peasants, the farmers, the slaves. Now let's step back and let's think about this. Isn't that a great way to justify to people that you are where you are, but you're still contributing to society as a whole? I remember when I didn't do so well in school, my dad would always say, well, the world needs ditch diggers, Tim, right? Everybody can contribute something to society based on their capability. So here, the idea is that everybody is an integral part of this universal whole, and the metaphor is that we're all like a body. And if we don't have legs, we can't stand. If we don't have feet, We can't walk. We can't get from place to place. Our legs are really important to us. If we don't have arms, we can't do things, right? If we don't have a mouth, we can't speak. So all of those things contribute to society as a whole. That sounds all warm and fuzzy. But what would you rather be, right? Would you rather be the mouthpiece that lives in this really privileged position and is able to interpret everything and tell people how to behave? Would you like to be the arms that do all the action and manage everything else? Or do you want to be the legs that everything else rests on? If you're thinking about who authors this, it's clearly priests, it's the Brahmins, probably with lots of support from the Kshatriya, who eventually become the Rajas. And it's this warm, fuzzy story that at the same time manipulates people into believing that you are where you are because God's placed you there and it's divinely ordained. So it's also kind of nefarious. Hopefully between this and the last set of slides, you can come up with a good answer to the first part of the response.